The night Damien Cole rejected her, the moon was full and bright, as if the sky itself wanted to witness her shame. Elena Voss stood in the center of the Blackthorn training grounds, surrounded by pack members who had once bowed to her as their future Luna. Her hands trembled at her sides, but her spine stayed straight. She would not fall apart in front of them, not yet. I, Damien Cole, Alpha of Blackthorn, reject Elena Voss as my fated mate. The words cut through her like claws through flesh. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, but Damien's face remained calm, almost businesslike, as though he were closing a trade deal rather than tearing apart a bond written into their very blood. Beside him stood Seraphine, daughter of the Ridgewood Alpha, her lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. The alliance between Blackthorn and Ridgewood mattered more to the Pack Council than a bond neither of them had asked for. Elena understood the politics. She had always understood the politics. What she hadn't understood was how much it would hurt to be discarded for them. She looked at Damien one last time, searching his eyes for even a flicker of doubt. She found none. I hope Ridgewood is worth it, she said quietly, and then she turned and walked away, past the pack she had served, past the home she had built, and into the dark line of trees at the edge of the territory. No one followed her, no one called her name. By dawn, she had crossed into neutral land, weak from exhaustion and the ache of a broken bond that no wolf fully recovers from. She did not know how long she walked before her legs gave out beneath her, or how long she lay in the underbrush before she heard voices. There's someone here. She's still breathing. The voice belonged to a young scout from the Ashfall pack, a territory that had never been on friendly terms with Blackthorn. Elena expected to be left for the crows. Instead, she felt herself being lifted, carried through the forest, brought to a place that smelled of pine and wood smoke. When she woke, she was in an unfamiliar room, wrapped in warm blankets, with a healer checking the wound at her side. Days passed in a haze of pain and quiet care, before she finally met the Alpha, who had allowed a rejected Omega from a rival pack to be brought under his roof. Kieran Ashfall was nothing like Damien. Where Damien commanded with cold precision, Kieran carried a stillness that made a room feel safer just by his presence. He did not ask her about Blackthorn. He did not ask what had broken her. He simply said, "You're welcome to stay until you're strong enough to decide what you want to do next." It was the first kindness Elena had been offered in weeks, and it nearly broke her composure completely. She stayed. At first, she kept to herself, helping in the healer's den, learning the rhythms of a pack that ran on mutual respect rather than fear. Slowly, she began to notice things about herself she had never had the chance to explore while living in Damien's shadow. She was fast. She was clever with strategy. And there was something else, something that had always been dormant inside her, waiting. It surfaced during a training exercise months later, when a rogue wolf slipped past the border patrol and charged toward a group of pups playing near the creek. Elena did not think. She moved, and when she shifted to intercept the threat, something ancient and powerful roared to life inside her chest. Her wolf form was larger than any Omega should carry, her eyes burning gold instead of the soft brown they had always been. She took down the rogue before Ashfall's own guards could reach the scene. The pack stood in stunned silence as she shifted back, breathing hard, staring at her own hands as though they belonged to someone else. Kieran was the first to speak. "Do you know what that means?" Elena shook her head. "It means you were born with alpha blood," he said. "Rare, and buried so deep, most wolves never discover it in a lifetime. Blackthorn didn't just reject their Luna, Elena. They rejected an alpha they never bothered to see." The words settled into her slowly, rewriting everything she had believed about herself. She was not the broken, discarded mate Damien had cast aside. She had simply never been given the space to become who she truly was. Under Kieran's guidance, and with the support of a pack that had welcomed her without expecting anything in return, Elena began to train seriously. She learned to control the surges of power that came with her newly awakened strength. She studied pack law, territory strategy, and the responsibilities that came with leadership. Kieran taught her patiently, never rushing her, never treating her healing as an inconvenience. Something shifted between them during those months, something neither of them named at first. It wasn't the desperate, fated pull that had bound her to Damien. It was quieter, built on mornings spent training in the training yard, on long talks by the fire about the kind of pack they both wanted to build, on the simple comfort of being seen for who she truly was, rather than who she was expected to be. One evening, nearly a year after she had arrived at Ashfall half-broken and unwanted, Kieran found her sitting on the ridge overlooking the territory, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and violet. "I'm not going to reject you," he said, sitting beside her. "And I'm not going to claim you either, not unless it's something you choose, fully and freely, with nothing forcing your hand." Elena turned to look at him. "What are you offering then?" "A place beside me, not beneath me. Co-alpha, if you want it. Ashfall doesn't need a Luna who stands in my shadow. We need someone strong enough to stand equal to me, and I think that someone is you." For the first time since the night of her rejection, Elena felt something other than grief settle into her chest. She felt seen, she felt chosen, not out of duty or political convenience, but because Kieran genuinely believed in what she could become. "I choose this," she said. "I choose you, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is where I want to be." The ceremony that followed was simple, nothing like the grand political spectacle Blackthorn would have made of a mating between two powerful packs. Ashfall celebrated quietly, with warmth instead of show, and Elena was crowned not as someone's mate, but as an alpha in her own right, equal in power and voice to the wolf standing beside her. Word of Ashfall's new female alpha spread slowly through the territories, carried by traders and messengers who spoke of a woman with golden eyes and quiet authority. It eventually reached Blackthorn. Damien heard the rumors first from his beta, who mentioned it in passing during a council meeting. A rejected Omega, risen to alpha status in a rival pack. He dismissed it at first, certain it was exaggeration, until a formal invitation arrived for the regional pack summit, listing Ashfall's leadership as Alpha Kieran and Alpha Elena. He read her name 3 times before he believed it. In the year since her rejection, Damien's life had not gone the way the council promised. His match with Seraphine brought the alliance Blackthorn wanted, but it brought little else. Seraphine ruled with ambition, not compassion, and the pack that had once thrived under balanced leadership had grown tense, divided by whispers of favoritism and cold decisions. Damien found himself lying awake many nights, wondering if the practical choice had truly been the right one, or if he had simply been too afraid to defy the council's expectations. He told himself he did not think of Elena often. He told himself many things. The pack summit was held in neutral territory, a grand hall built specifically for gatherings between rival alphas to discuss trade, borders, and peace. Damien arrived with Seraphine at his side, prepared for the usual routine of tense negotiations and careful diplomacy. Then the doors opened, and Ashfall's delegation entered. Kieran walked first, composed and steady as always, and beside him, wearing a crown carved with the silver markings of Ashfall leadership, walked Elena. She was not the woman Damien remembered. Gone was the softness of someone who had once shaped her entire identity around being chosen. In her place stood someone commanding, calm, dressed in deep green that matched the crest behind her, her golden eyes sweeping the room with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she stood. Damien's breath caught in his throat. Throughout the summit, Elena spoke with clarity and authority during trade discussions, negotiated fair terms for a border dispute between 2 smaller packs, and carried herself with a grace that drew quiet respect from alphas twice her age in leadership. She did not look at Damien once during the formal sessions, not out of avoidance, but because she genuinely had no need to. It was during a break between sessions that Damien finally found the courage to approach her, catching her alone near the gardens outside the hall. "Elena." She turned, her expression polite but distant, the way one might greet an acquaintance, rather than someone who had once shattered her entire world. "Alpha Cole." The formality struck him harder than any insult could have. "You look well," he said, immediately regretting how inadequate the words sounded. "I am well," she replied simply. He hesitated, searching for the right thing to say, the words he had rehearsed 100 times in his head over the past year, finally failing him now that she stood in front of him. "I never expected this, any of this. I didn't know you carried alpha blood." "Neither did I," Elena said. "Blackthorn never gave me the chance to find out." The words were not cruel, simply honest, and somehow that honesty cut deeper than anger ever could have. "I made a mistake," Damien said finally, the admission he had avoided for a year spilling out, now that it was too late for it to matter. "Rejecting you. I thought I was doing what was right for the pack, but I see now, I was only doing what was easy." Elena studied him for a long moment, and for the first time since the summit began, something softer crossed her expression. Not longing, but something closer to understanding. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "Not because what you did didn't hurt, but because holding on to that pain would only keep me tied to a life I no longer live. You gave me something you never intended to, Damien. You gave me the push I needed to become who I was always meant to be." "Is there any chance?" he began, but she gently shook her head before he could finish. "No," she said, not unkindly. "I found something at Ashfall I never had with you. Not just power, but partnership, respect. A place where I am valued for exactly who I am, not for who I'm useful to. I won't trade that, not for anything, not even for the fated bond we once shared." Kieran appeared at the edge of the garden path, his eyes finding Elena with quiet warmth, and she smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that Damien realized he had never once seen directed at himself, not even in their earliest days as intended mates. "The next session is starting," Kieran said, extending a hand toward her. Elena took it without hesitation and turned back to Damien one final time. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Damien. I truly do. But I already have." She walked away from him for the second time in her life, but this time, there was no shame in her steps, no fear, no broken pieces trailing behind her. She walked as an equal, as a leader, as a woman who had built her own crown out of the ashes of rejection. Damien stood alone in the garden, long after she disappeared into the hall, the weight of everything he had lost finally settling fully into his chest. He had once believed that rejecting Elena was the price of doing what was practical for his pack. He understood now, far too late, that some choices cost more than pride or politics ever could. Some choices cost the one person who had truly seen him, and in return, he had never truly seen her at all. Inside the hall, Elena took her place beside Kieran as the summit resumed, her voice steady, her presence commanding, her golden eyes reflecting not the girl who had once begged silently for acceptance, but the alpha she had become entirely on her own terms. And somewhere behind her, in the quiet of the garden, her former mate could only watch her go, understanding at last that some crowns are never given, they are earned, one broken piece at a time, until what remains is stronger than anything that came before it.